Oh, it popped up on the Facebook feed.
Oh. All right. Hello to everybody that is tuning in tonight with the Coach's Corner. We have a wonderful episode tonight, as always. It's always wonderful to have everyone here. How is everyone? Good.
Excellent.
Good.
Perfect.
Great time.
Good.
Awesome. All right. So everybody that is tuning in, by all means, ask questions. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat. I will pass them off, but questions are highly encouraged. So feel comfortable and free. Make yourself at home. That being said, I will pass this off to Duke Brannos.
All right. Well, first thing I'd like to say is welcome everyone to another Friday night. I'd love to say Friday at night at the fights, but I can't even find those anymore. It's unfortunate. I used to watch boxing on Friday nights, but instead, in the far left corner, we have Duke Sean and Jarl Thorfin, Archimedes, and our special guest, Count Ulrich. And the best part was he agreed to come on this a while ago. And the good part is I've known him. God, how long have we known each other?
We've known each other going on 19 years now.
Yeah, it's only it's kind of like yesterday. You know, it's
right.
There was a lot of drinking in those 19 years and stuff, so it's hard to remember. But anyways, we'll have a great show tonight, and I hope everybody enjoys it. If people don't know, well, let's go ahead and start with a first question. So, where are you from? How long did it take you to get knighted? What's your social security number?
So my social security number is BR54. I am from Meridies. I joined the STA in 1999 and started fighting immediately. It took me 7 years to get knighted, or 6 years from when I got squired.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So,
that's
you know, I guess
pretty quick for that time frame, honestly.
Yeah, really. That's what I was thinking too. So, how long did it take before you won your first crown?
So I won my first crown in 2012. So it took 13 years to win my first crown, 10 years after I started fighting in them.
Gotcha.
And how old were you when you started fighting?
I was 29. Actually, right at the edge of 29. I was turned 30 like a month later.
So that's not bad at all, really. I mean,
Right.
if you think about it, we were talking about this the other day. It's just, you know, how it seems like we started in the society early with a lot of college groups and things, and those have kind of run their path. And now we're getting people starting later in life when they, you know, the work is, you know, kind of settled in and they're looking for a hobby. They're looking to get active again. You know, I was, so that's kind of the time frame you came in that period of time. So do you think that was beneficial for you, or would you like to start it earlier?
Okay, so I first found the SCA because it was lost. I first found the SCA right before I went off to Desert Storm. So I was visiting my grandmother in the hospital out in Denver, went to a Scottish festival, found these guys rolling around on the ground, all in male, beating the hell out of each other. And I was like, how do I do that? But it took me almost 8 years to come back to it because I couldn't find it back then. It was hard to find in the early 90s where I grew up. So there's a part of me that thinks, man, I really would have loved this from the get-go. But I would have been Calanteri, and I really like stainless for the most part. So I wasn't into the rust thing. No, I'm kidding. I would have been Calanteri had I started before I was stationed, but I think I would have loved it just as much then. I think it would have been good for the younger version of me, but it was great for the guy that found it in the 30s, in my 30s too.
Yeah, that's something that I've been kind of noticing over the years, especially after the last 20 years or so, as you know, people are getting started in our sport later in life. In fact, we have an episode on this coming up in a couple of weeks. We're going to be talking about some of this, but you know, people are starting later in life, and part of that is, you know, I had a young student years ago that you know, was doing Pell work with me and everything, and then he turned 16 and got a driver's license, and then just disappeared, right? And I think there's a lot of people that, you know, find it early or exposed to it at some point early on in their life, and then, but there's just so much going on in the late teens and early 20s now that I think you know, people kind of skip over that because there's so many other things that you could be doing. And then as life happens and you finish college or you get settled in your career or something like that, you start to find an appreciation for the historical component of what we do. And then people kind of come back to it at a later time, and they may or may not be, you know, like you said, there's that, you know, doing the training when I'm young versus having the maturity of being able to, you know, to get into it with a clearer mindset.
Absolutely. When I was,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh no. When I was young, I would not have been focused on fighting when I first started. I'm focused on getting better fighting when I first started, as I was when I found it at 30, essentially. That made me much more focused and much more able to be guided towards the right way. I would have been much more into the partying and having fun. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's absolutely a part of it, and I still enjoy that. But I would have been all over the place at 21 or 22 had I joined.
How did you?
Yeah, I mean, that's one. I guess, you know, it's interesting. You come in with two different views. It's like at that younger age, you can kind of get lost before you come in, compared to, you know, you get a little bit of life under you, and you have the time. You can make that specific time. You know, you don't have to worry about your car breaking down on it to practice or figuring out a ride. You know, so you know, all of those kinds of things. I think, you know, it's always great.
Keep going.
It's always great to have. Sorry, guys.
Coach's corner tradition.
Yeah, it is a
I'm eating dinner too.
It's always great to have kind of a good solid base to do things off. I know in my first few years it was kind of, I was going to practice, but like you were saying, my focus wasn't very good, and then it really kind of honed in when my job kind of fell in place, and then I'm like, hey, this is, you know, day after day after day, I can start pushing. So you mentioned you were squired. Who were you squired to?
I was squired to Sir Connell McDale, a wise and influential knight. You meet those guys in the SCA when you first get started that you just click with right off the bat. You know, your interests, you know, mesh, your life philosophies mesh. And that was myself and Sir Connell. He and I, you know, we could talk D&D, we could talk, you know, sports, we could talk fighting, you know, all of these different things that we could, you know, that we just got along on. And I stole, you know, a lot of my stuff from him because, you know, he trained me. Unfortunately, he got sick a couple of years into my being a squire, and then ended up having to take a little bit of a break. So I learned a lot from him, and a lot off the field, because I could still talk to him, but he wasn't able to fight and train me at the very beginning, after the very beginning.
Go ahead, Thorfin.
Hey guys, so I was wondering, I started pretty young, and I was having the ability of no really think slowing me down. I did a lot of practices, but starting at 29, did you find that you had to balance like your life and going to practice? Because to achieve what you've achieved, you had to have set out at some point to do a lot of actual practicing, and that's one of the commonalities between, you know, any knight you're going to find is that this commitment to achieving, right? And so how did you balance that? That's for me very interesting.
So I got very lucky in that I joined at the same time as my best friend. We joined together, now Duke Caspar from Meridies. But he and I came in at the same time, and I was engaged when we joined. I'm married, you know, ended up marrying a lovely woman who was very understanding of my passion for this, because I mean, when I say I was hooked from the first time I put on armor, I mean, you know, that guy that shows up at practice is always like, oh, I'll try this when I get all my armor together.
Sure, yeah.
You know, and then you're 6 years later and he's still, you know, he's still missing everything except for a pair of half gauntlets.
Yeah, he's armor together.
Right.
He's got to get the perfectly period suit of armor.
Right. That was not me, except for that was me. I was that guy I wanted everything to get everything and get everything to fit and get out there immediately. My very first event was a Gulf Wars, and it was a Gulf wash, and the merchants were trying to get out of there. Everything was rained out. They closed the event early. They were trying to get out of there, and I bought an entire suit of armor that mostly fit, but I did not look out like I was from Meridies. But that's a bit of a tangent. But Caspar and I, who also got his armor together, he was practicing. It took me like 3 total weeks to get my armor together and get out there and start fighting. And from that point on, we fought at our group's practice, at the next group's over practice. Anytime that we called each other and said, hey, you want to fight? We would go over to each other's house and fight. So I was fighting 3 to 4 times a week within the first 6 months of starting.
So yes, it's like having a workout partner, right?
Right,
The
exactly.
importance of having someone who's continuously there to inspire you to go there, right? So
Exactly.
I don't know how many times I've talked to fighters that said like having someone like that was really important to them, because when you're like sitting on the house, sometimes just the gravitational pull of the house is really, really heavy. And then, but if you know that, you know, your partner is going to practice, right? Now you're like, I got to go to practice. But oftentimes they're at home thinking to themselves, the only reason that they're getting up to go to practice is because they know you're going to practice, right? And having that person to help draw you in, it's invaluable. And so if you can find those out there, guys, if you can find that person in your local group that helps you motivate to go and do these things, even if it's spell work or whatever, find that person, because a workout buddy, enormous.
And Ulrich, where are you? Where are you located geographically?
I'm in North Alabama. I'm in Huntsville, Alabama. Okay.
Because you're talking about, you know, your practice and then a couple other local practices. So how far? I mean, how many practices do you have within a reasonable driving distance to go to practice?
So when I at that point in time, I could hit 4 practices within 2 hours of my house.
Nice.
And one of them had at least 6 nights in it. My local practice had 0 nights in it, but the practice the Shire over had 6 nights, and then the practice that was 2 hours north had 4 nights. 1 Duke Alanon, and then the practice that was only like an hour and a half away had 2 nights, but neither of them fought anymore, but they would still come out and train. So I had a lot of opportunities to learn from some really good fighters, but I tried to stop being hard-headed early enough to learn from them too, instead of just, you know, getting out. And so, all right, I'm going to throw a weird thing here. My actual first name is Kim, K-I-M. So I have literally fought all of my life, and it's not like SCA fighting, but I've literally fought all of my life. So
Boy named Sue.
A boy named Sue
was put out a few months after that I was born, but it was actually aired a month before I was born. So there's some possibilities there, but I did that. I bounced bar. I've done some other things. Time in the Army, it's just one of those things. But learning SCA combat was a complete change because we're no longer fighting. It's not I can get my hands on you in this fight. I can end this fight. I'm dead the first good time you hit me. So I had to unlearn an entire lifetime of fighting to do this sport. So,
but with all those variations in practice, how did that affect kind of your early foundations of what you were learning? And was it a lot of variety, or were they all kind of teaching the same song?
It was great and it was awful at the same time, because you'd go to practice and you'd learn. This person would tell me you throw this shot this way, and the next person would tell me you throw that shot this way, and they're throwing the same shot and they're saying completely different things to throw the same shot. And then you've got Ailenon, who at the time, who's an amazing trainer now. At the time, we did not get him to new people because he would explode their brains, right? He would just, talk over their heads. Later on, much better, but especially for me. But
yeah, I think he mentioned that when he was on here.
But I would go out there and he would be like, well, just throw this. And I'm like, my arms don't bend that way. I don't understand. So I started getting confused. So I did what I did in my younger life when I played football. I made tape. I bought a video camera. I took it to practice, and I probably have 60 hours just of old practices where I would just watch the practices and watch how this fighter threw this shot, what I'm doing to open up for that, what they're giving me to that. And I did this other horrible thing, which was I wanted to beat my opponent at their game. So I would mirror their fighting style to learn their fighting style. And I would just get beat up at it forever until I learned enough of it so I could figure out what they were doing to me if I couldn't get them to explain it to me.
Right on.
So was there a light bulb moment for you?
I'm going to stroke your ego. Sure. So I'm at a Candlemas. The very first Candlemas I went to, I went up with Ailenon and Seth. And
Is that the Duke Brannos Invitational?
It is, yes, often known as the Duke Brannos Invitational. This would have been in 2001 or 2002. So I'm not sure. I think that was just when it was getting its name. I'm not sure how many you'd already won before then. But I get there, we're getting everything set up, and I realize I have left my body armor at home. So now I'm freaked out about my kit's not being right. Everything's not, everything, all of my normal things aren't there. Someone loans me some crappy loaner plastic body armor, and I go like 3 rounds in, and I end up getting knocked out by in a fight off with Ailenon, who I rode up there with. Because when you get to a certain point, if you tie, you have to fight off. And I thought, well, I did pretty good. And that's when Brannos pulled me aside and talked to me after I was outside doing pickups and said, you did pretty good. When do you want to actually be good at this? And we had nice long conversations, a nice long conversation then. And then later on, he came up to Ailenon and Shield's coronation, and we had a nice sit down long conversation where he gave me what I commonly refer to as the Brannos talk about, do you want to, you did good, do you want to be good?
Yeah, I've had that talk with people too.
Yeah, and sometimes it takes that hard talk, right? I mean, it really, the good part is you didn't cry, which that's usually what happens at Candlemas when I talk to people. And I'm joking about that, but there's some cases and where, literally it's you have to reset that expectation and say, are you really trying? Are you really looking inside yourself and understanding how much you want something and what it takes to get there? And I think that was, for you, you had all the stuff. You needed to go ahead and clear that mind and set that that path, right?
Right.
So
So as part of that, taking all of the stuff you had learned and the mirrored fighting and the techniques and making it yours instead of somebody else's that you were mimicking, did that process happen for you?
It did. I say all the time, I don't have anything of my own. I steal from everybody. It's a little bit of this. There's this shot that this guy throws that I really want to work into my style, and I will find a way. I was working in education and working tech in education, and as I was walking the halls on a service call, I would carry a yardstick with me, and I would work shots walking down the hall of where the shot would go. It made sure that my shot stayed on edge because the aerodynamics of the yardstick. But absolutely, I took bits of Brannos's footwork and the stance, the sort of A-frame stance. This was the earlier Brannos, not the boxing footwork. My footwork has always been football based because that's what I know. But and I would take Garrett's rising snap and try and work that in, and I would take Elanon's little offside thumb lead and try and work that in. And I would just stole from different people to try and do, mimic shots that I saw that work. And then I would get the lesson of, right, but they all start from this one position. You always start them from the one position, otherwise you telegraph what's happening. And so I would get with the moments I had with Brannos, the moments that I had with Elanon or Seth, and they would refocus the things that I'm trying to build into my fighting style. So
when you had that moment, when Brannos asked that question of you, I mean, that's a point at which you have and I've seen this plenty myself. You have a certain physical skill set that, quite frankly, was probably good enough to win you a couple of crowns. But it's that mental shift that changes everything. What was it? What was going through, like, how did you see that mental shift? I mean, like, that's your light bulb moment. Like, how did you see that? What changed in how you approach the sport to really press on to be that much better?
So two things. There was the moment with Brannos, and then there's another moment with Elanon in a melee where he has me in charge of things, and he's trying to get the people to see leadership out of me, and he stops me from doing something in the command structure of things and says, why are you doing, we were in a bridge battle and I had the smaller force. He's like, why are you doing this? I'm like, because it's fun. It's what my people can do. It works. And he says, right, you're doing what's fun. That's great. I need you to be in command to win. So I took, and I made a killing cup, which I hate. I think are boring, but we made a killing cup and we kept winning. So there's that. And that also applied to fighting. And that was, we always say, make sure that what you're doing for fun, that you're enjoying yourself, or you're not doing it wrong. And that's true. But as I've been told several times, and I know it's true, winning is fun. So if you're being successful, you will enjoy it. But it went from, you can still have those fights where you're just out there enjoying yourself. If you want to get out there and just have some scrap fights and just, get in a range and throw, you can have a few of those fights if you want them. But when it's time, when you're out there to accomplish a mission, then fight the smart fight. And it was learning to fight smarter instead of harder. Learning to create openings instead of just take the openings that are given to you. I had a horrible habit of, I wanted to beat the trap. If you're trying to trap me and I see it, I wanted to kill you in your trap set. So that was learning to not do those things, to not just try to beat someone at their own game, but learning to do the things that I do well and force you to make a mistake was the portion was difficult for me. And of course, the more you win, the more confidence you get. And the more confidence you get, the more you win because you believe in what you're doing. It's a vicious little circle.
I've got a little bit of an off topic for you here. So we were just talking amongst ourselves in the chats, and something came up that what is the fighting field in Meridies called? Out here we call this field or the Ulrich. And is it if it is the Ulrich, is it called that because of you?
Oh, I both hate and love you people. So for the most part in Meridies, it's called the list field or the list or the field. But it is by very few of us a long time ago was still called the Eric. I learned it as the Eric. I knew nothing about, I've been calling it the Eric since before I knew the SCA existed, because I read it in a book, and the book was written by someone in the SCA, and they had called it the Eric. So I'd been calling it the Eric for 15 years before I joined the SCA. And so when we started an event here called Meridian Grand Tournament, we started calling it the Eric because Meridian Grand Tournament was supposed to harken back to the beginning of fighting in the SCA. And at that point, that's the West, and the West called it the Eric. So we were calling it the Eric. And for the most part, we still call it the Eric at that event. Now, the Ulrich came from, on Tuesday nights, we do this little show called Great Fights of YouTube. And those guys, Brannos, are some mean
you're
people,
talking about,
and they like to have fun with you. And so Ulrich, Eric sounds similar. So they started calling it the Ulrich. And there's a petition out there to rename the Eric or the list field the Ulrich.
I gotta say that is at least as good of a reason to name it that as the reason it's actually called the Eric out here.
Right?
Yeah.
Because there was two list fields, and one of them had a red rope, and they called it the red one, and then it became Eric the red, then it became the Eric. So lame, right? But I mean, like,
Yep.
when I look at like something like that's way cooler than that, right?
Oh, we were so clever in the 70s.
Oh, I know, right? We thought we were really good.
yeah, that was a good night. I remember. So it was interesting early off in COVID. We were on Great Fighters YouTube, and I'm looking, and I see Ulrich's name, and he wasn't on video or anything, and he was just kind of hanging out in the dark, listening and being quiet. And I think it was towards the end of the show, I was like, Ulrich, is that you? and pulled him in, and then we haven't been able to shut him up since. So it's easy. All of a sudden, he started like 12 shows and became an internet sensation. But on that note, what shows are you running right now? So, I mean, you've been really active during COVID for your kingdom and for the society. I think, the best part is people needed that, and you provided it. I was on one of your shows, and it was really, I mean, it was great. There were 50, 60 people or something
Right.
on that show. So it was a really good time. Tell us what the shows are so everybody can know what they are.
Well, you did bring a bump to our viewing for that one. We had the local star on. So I have Sir Eric Martel, Knight of Kittens, Bringer of Joy himself in Meridies, and I have two shows. We have a review of Meridian fighting videos, which focuses on reviewing old Meridian crown lists, because I had a bunch of tapes, and everywhere we saw online, we started this back in, I want to say, late sometime either August, late July or August, I think we started, because everywhere we looked, we saw lots of West Coast content, and we saw lots of northern, some Eastern content. I wasn't seeing anything from Trimaris, Meridies, Glenauburn, even Atlantia, anything that represented our area of the known world. And I wanted to, Meridies has its own special fighting culture, that, and I wanted the Meridian fighters to see what our culture was like, and make sure that they remembered that. So we started that show, and we just went back with some old crowns, and started, I think, from 2002, which was their first crown list that I had a video from. And since then, people have sent me more videos, and we have stuff going back to 1992, I think. But and we've just gone through all of the Meridian crown lists from 1992 that we had from 1992, and right now we're at the last two. We have the last two from 2019 that are left. And then as the second show we had is how shit works, in specifically Meridian, and how stuff works here in this kingdom. And what that was about was we were about to come out of the moratorium on events, and January was going to end the moratorium. We're going to be able to get into events. And Sir Eric was like, we're going to have a whole bunch of people who are going to fight in this crown list, because this is going to be their chance, right? We've been off for a year, and this is going to be their chance. And if someone who's never been crowned wins, they should know what's going to happen, and what they're going to go into, and what they're going to see and have to deal with from, especially if an unbelt wins, what the being crowned is going to be like, what to expect that day. And he was talking about maybe a 1 or 2 show thing to get us just to that point. So we were going to do one on what happens the day you win crown, and what happens as heirs, and then whoever was crowned for you would train you for the rest of it. Then the moratorium got extended until the end of May, and we just decided to expand that on how everything works in the kingdom: peerages, offices, orders, everything. And we're finishing up the basis of that show now. We have 2 shows left in that series, and that's the Society Seneschal and the Meridian Ombudsman. And we've covered every peerage, several of the orders, all of the royalties. So if folks want to know how things work here, there's a whole list of videos.
What a great.
I've got something of a user submitted question, or a viewer submitted question that I was asked to ask of you. So in your video review that you and Eric are doing, which one of you is meaner?
Bart. When Count Bart's on the show, he's the meanest. No, we're both mean and not mean at the same time. We both try to find the good in the situation. If there's something that's ugly that's going on, if you see on the video that the crown has to be involved, we're gonna tell you what we remember of that. And if it's a good thing, we'll tell you it was a good thing. It was good communication. And if someone was messing up, we're gonna be honest about it, because it's historical. It's all right there. For the most part, you can still hear the stuff on the tapes if you go back and look at them. But if it's a flat shot, I'm much meaner than Eric is. If it's a calibration issue, Eric's a little meaner than I am. So we're a little even.
I was told
about
ask.
A flat shot. Oh, that's fine.
Well,
we told to ask by Eric.
We are hoping to start up our video review again here pretty soon with Helga. So maybe we'll have you come on and help us out with one of those episodes.
I'd love to.
Heck yeah, because nobody's meaner than Helga, right?
I'm gonna be straight.
For God's sakes, no.
I make all of my squires watch that video review show. Even there's great stuff there that impact that works whatever kingdom you're in, right? A lot of the power generation stuff we don't need on a normal basis in Meridies, but when we travel outside of Meridies, we damn well need that stuff. Right?
Yeah.
So good form.
Range is range, no matter where you're
right.
at. Those type of things. So these are type of things that anyone can apply. So I think that's a fun part about watching those videos. I would love to. Have you transferred your videos to disc? Are they all on disc?
So most of them are on disc, and I've been going through. That's been the other thing in this, is constantly uploading them to YouTube. So it's been a hassle, but
that is awesome. That's an awesome gift to take those old crowns and put them on there. I love watching that kind of stuff.
I agree.
I can watch
agree
it
100%.
every night. It's like my lady goes to bed and I watch fight videos like all the time. So it's something I really look forward to. Thank you for doing that.
My pleasure.
So there was another viewer question. She asked, or they asked if where those links are posted for the videos that you did for. Probably most likely, I'm guessing they were talking about the Kingdom officer stuff.
The how shit works videos. So if
Yeah.
you go to, I'll pull them up while we're talking here and post them in the.
Well,
In the chat?
Saib just posted a link to the Hounds and Stag.
Oh,
Yeah,
perfect.
that's it. That'll be
That's
perfect.
the-
They're
that's the
all
YouTube
there,
channel.
and they're on YouTube and on Facebook.
Do you
The
have,
fighting review.
Do you have Cal hosting that for you on KK Productions?
No, he offered, and we had a couple. Baby Ninja offered, but we have a lady by the name of Jessica of Osprey who does our stuff for us. And Cal, how that man does 12 shows, I have no idea. That's
Well,
just
I was
crazy.
one of them. I just finished up my series, and my wife is starting a series this coming Sunday in my time slot on Concert Conversations.
Right.
So yeah, he's doing some really incredible work.
Yeah.
There's some.
Awesome.
I mean, I think that I was really happy to see that you started up both of those shows. I mean, it was you went from it was fun because you went from kind of watching to all of a sudden you're like, hey, I'm going to jump in 2 feet, and you really brought a lot to your kingdom that way, and drew people in and kept the SCA alive. But even more than that, by having all of these and the explanations of all the offices and how they apply in your and offices and wards and all of that and how they apply in your kingdom is, I mean, long-term wise is super beneficial. And then of course, like Thorfin said, I mean, there is nothing better than having like all your crowns from as far back as you can go, to now. I mean, that's history is important. That's what we do. We're supposed to do, right? I mean, we're kind of supposed to be living that. And sometimes we just don't do a very good job at doing that. And I think COVID allowed us to really step up that game.
So
Yeah.
I was going to say, you mentioned squires. I was just interested to see how many squires you currently have, if they're all local to you, and sort of what's changed for you since, working on your own style, your own philosophy, and now transitioning into that teacher trainer aspect for your students.
So I do have I have 3 of my own squires currently, and a foster. I have none of them are super local to me. All of them live at least 2 hours away, but that's not uncommon here in Meridies. So I very much to go off of one of Sean's old shows. I very much work on the networking concept. Not 2 of my squires are female, and they don't fight like I do. They're not going to fight like I do. They needed different. One of them's left-handed. They needed more left-handed training. So I did things, like get them with Brannos, or get them with Aelonon, or get them with whoever they needed to learn something from, because I didn't learn from just one person. And I think that helped me a lot. So I make sure that I get them to people to train them on how to do things. I'm not a great glaive fighter. When I wanted to teach them how to fight glaive, I got them to Sir Randolph Lee up in the mid realm and said, I brought Randy down for an event, and I was like, hey, work with my squires on glaive. And I teach them my philosophies, my concepts. These are are how we call shots. This is how we deal with certain situations. And I teach them anything from my shots that I can. But sometimes, when you're teaching someone, in my movement, they all use my movement style, which is based off of it's a conglomeration of Brannos's and football, because 2 of them used to play football. But when I'm teaching and I get that glazed over part, I'm like, you're not getting this. What can we change? What can we adjust? Sometimes it's just bringing in a different trainer and keeping it from being 15 different trainers and keeping it to be just being one different trainer. If I want to train someone how to throw a wrap forever, the first 3 years I fought, I couldn't throw a wrap without hurting my wrist. Every time, because I had my wrist broken before. So every time I threw a wrap, it injured. I just stopped because it hurt. And then Duke Brew one night was like, all right, let's just walk through it. And he grabbed my hand and he just took me through positions and throwing the wrap. And so I find other people if I can't teach it.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's a
I
really
think
good representation of being a good coach, right? We talk a lot about this between the difference between trainer, teacher, but being a good coach can be oftentimes finding a place for your student to learn that particular thing, right? And I think that you just described a very good example of what we're talking about. So
yeah, also I think you hit the networking concept perfectly as well. It's like you've been at this for so long, and you get to meet Brannos and you get to meet Al-Anon and you get to meet some of these other people, and then when you have squires, and they want to like find their place in the world, and now you're in this position where you're like, who do you want to talk to? Like,
Exactly.
I will get you literally anybody in the world to help you with this concept. And that's one of the really nice things about networking. And I was when I started fighting, I was squire to Brian Tarragon, and he took me everywhere while he was king. And I've been surrounded by the best fighters in the history of our sport from day one. And yeah, I can literally call anybody in the world to because and to what Thorfin was saying, it's like we don't have all the answers, right? We can't possibly have all the answers. And sometimes even if we do have the answer, maybe we're just not saying it in the way that you need to hear it. So let me get you anybody in the world, and especially with the powers of the interwebs now, where we literally can like get a Zoom call with anybody in the world to explain how these concepts work. And yeah, so I think you hit that networking concept just perfectly.
And continuing that philosophy of networking, learning from teachers, that's a huge gift, and it's a great legacy to continue.
Sorry, my dog just lost his mind. Someone fired a gun next door. So
Oh, welcome. Nice.
welcome to living in the country.
Yeah, there you are.
We've had a
Here's
couple of questions.
I'm going to throw this question. Do you have like, we talk about, and I guess what you just covered is kind of SCA philosophy, kind of fighting philosophy, right? I mean, at least for your squires, and how you learned was really kind of the same way, right? I mean, your knight was more, there for you mentally and doing stuff with you, and you went out and found people to help train you, and I'm sure he helped you, pointed you to people, and that's what you're kind of continued on. I guess you keep talking about your kind of your base is out of football. What kind of things out of football have you kind of applied inside your style?
So from football, I started out playing football, organized football at 10, and I played it all the way through high school, and a little bit in the Army, in a local area thing. But so the footwork, there's drills in football. There's the old one where the coach puts the football out in front of them and everyone moves the direction of the football. There's making sure you don't cross your feet unless you're turning, and showing how to do that in coverage. Because I played football at small schools, so you literally had to know how to play almost every position at some point, even if it was just to have for other people to have someone to train against. So I've done everything from linebacker to all across the defensive line, defensive end, to fullback, to offensive line, to tight end. Those are all the positions I played at some point during my time playing football. So there are different portions that match. But the main one that I've tended to use is linebacker actions when you're trying to get to something. You need to get around people, you need to get through people, and you need to get people to move out of your way in certain situations. So a lot of your foot fakes come from running back things. It's that big step to get someone going one direction and then to come back. And instead of getting past them, I want to get their body going one direction so that I can come to the other side and throw a shot. So if you can get the fight moving, in Meridies, a lot of our fights, there are very few fights that are static. It's almost all movement, small movement, and then big movement. There's very little standing toe to toe. There's very little. There's lots of micro movements, and if you can get someone going in a direction, or get someone to move their stuff by moving your stuff, you're not really moving it anywhere. You're just kind of doing this. So that's where I took all of that stuff, looking at different spots. You want to throw someone off who's not, you can see your eyes, just glance down at something. Once you catch them looking at your eyes, glance at something. Glance at somewhere you're going to throw 2 or 3 times, and then throw there. And then later on in the fight, glance somewhere else, and then throw where you looked before. So when you catch them following you, things like that. Those are things from being an offensive lineman. You line up. You have to put your head on the other on one side of a person and drive them the other way. So you start glancing the way you're going, and you you do that 2 or 3 times, and they pick up that you're doing it. And then you glance the other way, and you move the other way and drive them where you were going. So things like that was what I brought into fighting from football.
I think that's great stuff. I mean, I think I think that's an example of how, if you come out of something, take a look at what you're already doing inside that, because I think a lot of us who are like, well, I'm a wrestler, that does me no good. And it's like, no, it absolutely does you good. You have to find the things that still fit there. There's that in wrestling, I do this a lot with folks, and there's this, that connection. And in wrestling, it's a physical connection. You might have an arm, a shoulder, a back of the head, right? And if there's a little bit of push and pull, but that same thing happens without, with swords in our hands. We still have that connection, and we're pushing and pulling, and depending on how much pressure you get, you can change it. So, I would say for everyone, you can take a look at what you're doing. What kind of footwork do you do in soccer or in basketball? Al-Anon talks about basketball all the time and how that helped him. And I think that's it was interesting because I kind of had a feeling on some football stuff, but you went through a bunch of stuff I really like, and I'll probably use that with some people because I usually ask what kind of stuff you've done, and that's a good way to make sure that they understand that they can still use those things, and that they're not like brand new. They're prepared to do stuff. It's just a different way.
Yeah, that's one of the things I do, is to take something that somebody's already doing, especially when they're having a hard time, grasping a particular concept, when you can make that relation to whatever previous sport they've done, or even, either martial arts or even military training. Some of that stuff, when you understand somebody's background, you're trying to get across a key concept, and you're able to say, this is exactly like what you already know how to do. So let's take exactly that footwork, and this is how it relates or translates to what we're doing. And there's somebody, I mean, on the one hand, you can't just come right in and say, well, I'm a black belt in another discipline, so I should be able to kick ass in SEA combat. But when you treat this like its own thing, later you can make those connections with what your body already knows how to do. So you're not trying to make it exactly the same thing, but there's, when you understand the foundations of the one, then you can make the connection. And for some people that comes earlier in, like, you already know how to do this.
Exactly. Go ahead, Thorfin. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, I know. I saw that.
Oh,
Yeah, you're back.
I was even on top of stuff too. Hey, so there's a lot of crowns that are now showing their crown tournaments like live and streaming them. And I'm just wondering, what do you feel like are the pros and cons of that, and how do you see that in the future of the SCA?
I really like it. I really enjoyed. I've watched both the Lockout crowns, and I've watched the Atlantean crown list. And
Me too.
Man, let me right quick, the Atlantean crown list team that live streamed that, man, they were awesome.
Yeah,
I love the way they transitioned a lot of stuff and let the folks know that the live mic was on. I really like it, especially in a situation now when people can't get out. I don't know how that'll translate when you have people at the event. when you have 150, 250 people at an event trying to live stream that. If you've ever videotaped a crowd, it's all you can do. First, it's all you can do to keep people from walking in front of your camera. And you can do some things to fix that if you're officially live streaming it. But there's that, and then there's of course the marshal butt issue where there's always a marshal.
I was going to bring that up. I was going to say, like, is there any way we can get those guys to move their ass out of the way of the camera? It's like every time, right in front of it. I'm just like.
Right, and even when you move your camera, I've literally picked up my camera, moved it to a different point in the field, and the marshal that was in front of me over here walked, lined back up. I'm just like, really?
Every time.
But absolutely, I think it's a good thing to an extent, and that's I don't want it to take the place of people being there.
Sure.
There's so much I love, other than fighting in Crownless. I love just being at Crownless. I love the atmosphere. I love to watch my friends fight, and I don't want it to take away from that. But for folks who I think there's a place for it, and I think it's a good thing to an extent unless it starts damaging our attendance, and at that point we may want to reassess it. But if it's not damaged, if it's not hurting anything, go for it. It's great to see your buddy. If you're laid up, I get to watch you in Crown, and that'd be awesome, right?
Yeah, I'd love to see the cameras become non-obtrusive, though. Maybe have a little thing around them or something, and so people on the Lisfield or the Eric or the Ulrich or whatever it's called where you live can actually see it there and know not to get in the way or not to mess with it, right? So because right now, like a little camera stand, maybe you don't even notice it.
You could literally put it on a banner, right? On the top of the
exactly, or something like that. So that way it's just kind of there it is, and everyone knows that corner of the field has a camera right there. So that way they can be kind of conscientious about it, right? Right. And that maybe stop that martial ass too. So
it depends if they want to make sure people see it.
That is not going to stop the martial ass. It's not going to stop that.
It's America's marshal's ass.
you also don't want to interfere with the marshals doing their job, and if that's where they need to stand,
absolutely.
Then I understand that. But I don't know what if you can't have someone going move 2 steps to the right, because I don't know that any fight that I can't marshal from here that I can't also marshal 2 feet to the left.
Right. True story.
Right. Well, and in our kingdom, we've been live streaming events for a long time, long before the pandemic, and it's been really handy just for people at home that can't make the event for one reason or another. It's really handy for them to be able to follow along with what's going on. During the pandemic, our kingdom has been doing virtual events, and I think my take on that has always been that like virtual events are not better than in-person events, not by any stretch of the imagination. And when this is all over and we can do real events again, I don't want to do virtual events. I don't want to, I don't want to do those in lieu of whatever. I'd like to go back to live streaming the real events, the in-person events that we're having, so people can follow along at home, this is not better than real events. It's just better than nothing at all.
Yeah. So with the pandemic and all of this virtual content, you've been doing a lot. One of our questions was, what's been the most rewarding thing personally that's come out of all of your involvement with all the e-content?
Well, other than, I've had the opportunity to, personally, I've had the opportunity to do a few things. There's the whole weird timeline where people ask me about things like that, and opportunities to be on the shows like this are great. But the best thing about it has been the gratitude of the people who people who are getting to watch it. They were like, oh, well, that makes so much sense to me now. You guys, a knight from Palantir that contacted me and was like, now I understand why you guys bring up your own people in chivalry circles. We don't do that. And whereas in Meridies, we're the only ones who bring up, you don't bring up my squire, I bring up my squire. You might tell me it's time for you to bring up your squire. And if all 4 of you say it's time for you to bring up your squire, then I'll believe you. But it's, we're not pimping them. We're not out there cheerleading them and trying to sell them. But things like that, things that make people understand Meridies more, and people that have moved to Meridies getting a chance to understand more what's going on here and how we're different, and not necessarily different from other kingdoms, but just different. And helping that understanding, or people telling me I was so burned out on ESCA, or I didn't want to do ESCA, but I wanted to see about this subject, and that really, I learned a lot, or in just that kind of stuff. And same thing with everything, right? Just when people when you're helping people, it makes it better. On a personal level, the most rewarding thing is I've relearned from watching the videos. I realized 3 shots that I used to throw that I don't throw anymore, that I've picked back up.
Didn't we talk about this a couple weeks ago?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Same kind of thing. It's like you get into your fighting path there, and you just kind of look back and you're like, oh yeah, I used to throw that. And then you kind of stop throwing it because you just don't need it anymore.
Yeah, maybe it's lost its particular connection with what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
I've totally done that. And
but also it's part of your evolution though, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
you couldn't quite get to the point where you are now, where you can just like throw 3 or 4 pretty basic stuff. I mean, a lot of what I throw now is very, very basic stuff. It's just
Yep.
better execution of the basics, right? And we talk about that all the time. But in order to get to that, I kind of had to go through this evolution of, let me try this trick shot and let me try to do this other thing. And just, I mean, if nothing else, it gives you a better understanding of how the weapon works, and to kind of take that discovery of things before you, finally get back to that Bruce Lee thing of, a kick is just a kick and a punch is just a punch.
I think as we learn more about, get better at the when and the why,
Right.
what becomes a little less relevant sometimes, or more basic, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we see that a lot in boxing the same way. We see, some of the people talk about that, really the great boxers have 3, maybe 4 shots they throw all the time. They knew them all before, but you get to that point where it's like, I can set you up and hit you with this shot. And even if you know it, I'm still going to do it.
Yeah.
And that is the evolution, right? It's not the way they started. It's just kind of where they end. And that's a good or bad thing, because I think Ulrich would, bringing shots back is important too, because at some point you may find yourself limiting yourself. So by reintroducing something and going back to it allows you to see, well, maybe this shot actually will work better now that I can actually pull people into those positions better than I ever did before.
Yeah. So when a lot of the shots that I'm reconnecting with are shots that I moved away from because I was trying to develop this other shot, or I'm trying to go back to basics and refocus on what I was doing, or I was becoming too dependent on them at the time. And to try and get away from being dependent on them, I threw them away. And instead now I can bring them back in and maybe use them occasionally because I wasn't throwing them before. Generally speaking, I'm not the guy you go to in the kingdom for super high-end training. I'm the here's how you throw these 4 basic shots this way. Here's your offside, here's your flat snap, here's your leg snap, here's your short wrap. These are things, and they all start out from the same position, right? So generally when we get new people who are both brand new and beginning intermediate, I'm the one who walks them through that training locally. And then when they start getting into the different angles of those shots that are going to come in, then you hand them off to the Seth and the Aileron and the Caspar. So.
All right. So I guess then the next one, we kind of got into e-content a little bit there. You haven't fought in another, well, you fought in another crown since then? I mean, how many years has it been since you won crown?
So I won crown in 2012. So it's been 7 years, 9 years. Wow.
Yeah,
You know,
I was gonna say you missed a couple there.
or 15 because 2020 was like 7 years long. So
Yeah, that's true.
There's that. Yeah.
um so it's been 9 years, but I haven't fought in a crown since 2017. I did a stint as Kingdom Seneschal, and I'm now the emergency replacement deputy for the Society Seneschal. So I'm just not allowed to fight in those offices. I was going to, when I took a break after being Kingdom Seneschal, I was going to fight in Crown, but then the whole pandemic thing happened and has stopped me from doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So still in your plans?
It is. I have every intent of making my wife a duchess at some point, and I just love fighting in Crown, period, by itself. So
Yep.
I don't know that I'll fight after I win another one, if I win another one, but I'm going to continue to fight until I can't, or I do get another one. Then I'll reassess after that, because
Awesome.
I really want her to be a duchess.
I think we have a lot of people that felt the same way for our consorts as well. So, going back to one of the kind of standard questions, obviously in the last year, not a lot to do. Were you still doing any type of Pell practices, anything, or did you just kind of take a year off and chill out and do the e-content and do the service side of the business?
I'm not a huge Pell person. And here's I'm big on the Pell when I'm developing a shot. So I've done a little bit of that, or when I'm trying to perfect a shot. And by perfect, I mean make sure I understand it, make sure it's going to do the things I want it to do. Or if I'm trying to figure out a shot someone else is throwing, I'll watch video of them throwing it, and then I'll go out and work that to see the body mechanics of it and make sure that I feel it right. Because I can't defend against it well unless I know how it throws, right? But for the most part, what I've done for the first part of COVID, I gained weight, was what I did for the first part of COVID. So I put on my COVID-15, and then I started doing some yoga and weight training after that, and eating better. And I've been focusing on getting my conditioning back up until earlier this week, actually, where I finally got to put on armor, because I didn't have anyone to fight. I didn't have anyone to practice or train with. Caspar has left the SCA, unfortunately. So I lost my partner trainer, which was also damaging to me. He was my coach in my corner for my crown lists. So that was rough on me. But so yeah, I haven't done much fighting wise since COVID started, until earlier this week. I actually got to go out and do some skills, some drills, a little bit of sparring, and it was amazing. It felt so good to finally get the hat back on and get to swing some sticks.
So prior to kind of COVID setting in, were you working on anything special? Is there anything special you want to work on now? I mean, you're kind of reviewing shots. Are you going to kind of go through those shots and try to see what you might be able to revive again? Or
I am. I'm gonna, I got to put some ideas into practice earlier this week. With that, some of it worked out. The problem is, with trying to work back into a shot, is when you're working back into a shot against two really good fighters, then you can get discouraged on it really quick, because first off, you haven't fought in a year, and so you're telling shots, they're picking up shots. It's both good and bad, because when you get it to land, it's working. But when you throw it into their shield the first 3 or 4 times, you're like, damn it. But no, really what I want to get back to doing is just get back out into getting into practice. I have a theory that when you're out of practice, or when you start cutting back on practice, the first chunk, and you go back to practice, the first chunk of your practice is recovering back to where you were. So there's in my philosophy, there's recovering, there's maintenance, and then there's learning, or improvement. So the first, the more you're out of practice, the longer your recovery to where you were before is in those practices that you come back to. And then more the maintenance, the staying, once you've gotten back to where you were, the getting, the maintenance portion gets shorter, and then the more often you're at practice. So if you're only hitting once or twice a month, then your recovery time is long. When you start getting once a week, your recovery and maintenance are shorter, and your learning time is longer. So, and that's just how I explain it to people when they're, when you get that guy that's like, why is that guy so much better to me? And I've been fighting for 17 years and he's been fighting for 9. And I'm like, he goes to 2 to 3 practices a week, and you go to 2 a month. And this is, even if their time is the same. If one person's doing more fighting, they're going to be better. So right now, I just want to get back to getting to regular practices, to the point where we can do that. All unofficial right now, but I want to get back to the point where we're doing those, and I'm doing those, and I get past that recovery point in the maintenance point, and then actually start getting better again, which has been a while for me.
So with the recovery, you're talking about the recovery, the maintenance, and the learning. In that recovery process, how much of that is physical recovery, technical recovery, and how much of that is mental recovery? Which one do you think you're having the harder time getting back?
So the catching things visually, the visual cues came back pretty quick. But my accuracy was way off. And by way off, I mean, instead of hitting a spot that's 1.5 inches wide, I'm hitting a spot that's in a 4-inch wide. By the end of practice, I was back to, 1.5 inches wide. I have another saying that's, the difference between a squire and a knight is the ability to hit a gap that's this big and a gap that's this big. So, and that's the thing where I was. We ended on some accuracy drills. My power wasn't where I wanted it to be, but my accuracy by the end of the day was pretty close to where I wanted it to be. So the conditioning work that I've been doing really helped. So I wasn't blown by the end of practice, but I was breathing well. I wasn't stopping breathing, which is what I normally find when someone has been out of practice for a while, is they're stopping breathing as they throw a shot. It's that thing that people do as they start to throw shots, and that wasn't happening. So I was really happy with everything, really.
Awesome.
So,
but I really sucked at the beginning.
Talking about calibration, I want to actually go back and find it, because there's probably somebody that's a friend of you. Like, somebody asked, like, why do you hit so hard?
That would be Sir Eric. Sir Eric
Yeah,
Martel.
it might have been.
So he has this argument that that I hit much harder than him, and neither of us hit super hard. Meridies doesn't hit super hard. We can, if we need to, but that whole thing, he's trying to trick me. I'm going to go ahead and do it. He's trying to get me to talk about meridian calibration. Is what he's trying to do.
Oh, is that what he's trying to do?
Yeah. So here's the thing for folks who, because I've got a great audience here to say this to. Here's the difference between meridian calibration and most other kingdoms. The philosophy that I hear everywhere is, when you get hit, take all the question out of the shot. In Meridies, it's, if there's a question, then it was good. We've been fighting for a long time now. Most people who, the first thing we learn is how to throw a shot, how to receive a shot. So the difference in philosophies in most other kingdoms in Meridies is, either make sure there's no question, and here it's, if I have to question it, then you probably beat me.
Yep. And I think that's the key, is it's just a philosophy. And it's nice that the good part is, you guys are out talking about it, and people can understand it better and communicate it. And, it's the key is, for me, is there's a space in there that, to be polite, we meet in the middle. And,
right,
and that's what the society is based on. It's not polite to say, you have to come to my end. Well, no, that's, then that's not the game we're playing, right? We find the middle where we both can agree. And then that also means that sometimes you have to take your you don't have to take your calibration up, but at least
Right.
you have to take your power up, right? For some, because you're not going to say, well, why didn't you take that? Because I hit you, the way I hit my normal people in your kingdom. Well, that's your kingdom, right?
Right.
And so, I think we get caught up in a lot of this, and then we get caught up in the kind of like, you didn't take a shot type of scenario, where really what we should be looking is, where can we find that space? And sometimes it's hard to find that space in between, and it takes some time, but where can we find that space to mutually agree?
Where am I? Am I in the mid realm? If I'm in the mid realm, I don't expect you to change your calibration at all. Because why would I? I'm in your house. I'm still going to call my shot the same. That's me.
Right.
But when I come to your house, because my calibration is lower, right? If my calibration were higher, I would bring it closer to yours. And it's just about playing where you are. Try to conform to where you are.
Yeah, and I think even in the mid realm, it's that same space. It's like, okay, I'm fighting somebody from Meridies, then and it may just be a pickup at Penzik or whatever. It's like, okay, well, I'll tune calibration and throw down, and you're going to tune them up, and we're going to find a great place that we're going to enjoy our fight, because that's what we're trying to get to, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think ultimately when you get out in international competition, when you get out and when you're doing pickups at Gulf Wars or Estrella or Penzik, calibration has a way of just kind of leveling out with not a lot of discussion about it. Atlantia obviously is known for having pretty heavy calibration, but when you fight some of those guys out of Kingdom, they don't expect you to hit them the way they expect to be hit at home.
Right.
And likewise with Meridies, a lot of the guys I know from Meridies, they know that people across the known world expect to be hit. And as you were saying, Ulrich, it's like, yeah, we can hit. And I was at Astray one time fighting somebody from down in Trimaris, and he hits me with something, and I just like didn't register, and he said, do you need, do I need to hit a little more? I'm like, yeah. And he said, okay. And that was it. Like that's the whole discussion. So I think, especially at the higher levels of execution,
right,
if you want to be a top tier fighter in our sport, you're not going to be complaining about the calibration that you run across in all the different kingdoms, because they are all different. They are all, culturally based. But if you want to be amongst the top tier, you're going to figure out where that middle ground is, and you're not going to bitch about who's not taking your shots.
And so all of us are from our own different kingdoms, and all of our kingdoms do it the right way, right? My kingdom is the best, no matter which one of us says it, right?
Thorfin's in the West. They're the ones that do it.
Except for Thorfin, which everyone should do it the Western way, because y'all did it first. And I understand that. But no, I mean that's we have jokes and stuff like that with each other. But each kingdom does things a little bit their own way, and that's perfectly okay. As long as you understand that your kingdom is different, then it's all right. I did a thing one time at a golf course where I went out. I did it at Penzik once too, where I went out and I didn't tell anybody where I was from. I wasn't wearing, and I made sure I didn't fight anyone from Meridies or Trimaris or Glenalmond that I knew. And I didn't tell anyone. I didn't have any problems at all. Until I said, at the little break between the fights, I was like, hey, so where are you from? Oh, well, I'm from Ontier. Okay, hey, I'm Ulrich. I'm from Meridies. Okay, and at that point forward, 70% of the shots that I was throwing before wasn't good. Now this isn't knights. This is unbelts that I'm fighting, because they had this misconception, this preconception that Meridies didn't hit hard enough.
Yeah,
because that's what they've been told. And that's not a woe is me story. That was a funny little anecdotal evidence kind of thing, but it was just an interesting experiment to run. But it happened, I don't know, 6 times, 7 times.
Yeah, that's a real
Most
thing.
of the nights didn't make any difference at all.
Yeah. And I guess the piece on this is, you know, we can all sit here and talk about this because we're at a space in the game where we can make that change relatively easy and understand that. But, you know, for many people that are listening, maybe you're lower in that game, you're brand new, it can absolutely be frustrating, and it will be frustrating. And the key to remember is that they're not doing these things on purpose, and you're not, you know, and frustration's fine as long as you're not taking it out on your opponent. You know, sometimes you're like, give me a second, I'm just, you know, this is hard for me to compute or whatever, because it takes time to learn to get to this space. So just, you know, I don't want to make it, we all make it sound easy when we talk about things, but it when you're at a lower level, it definitely isn't. So, you know, the piece there, I think that's a great conversation, because it's one that needs to be had, and probably even in more depth, but I think it's an excellent conversation for here. So we're running about looks like about 15 minutes before the end here. Somebody did post, and it's interesting. I think it's because there's so many crowns coming up, and they asked why you love fighting in crowns so much. And I think there's a lot, you know, what I've noticed is it seems like there's a lot of newer people or up and comer people that are actually sound interested in fighting in crowns again. You know, I think a lot of kingdoms crowns got smaller over time because they just didn't feel like they fit. But I think COVID has kind of said, you know what, why not? So I think the question really comes is like, why do you like fighting in crowns?
So I mean, first and foremost, and when I say this, I'm not, you know, we have the romantic version of idea of chivalry, and, you know, for the lady and for their inspiration. That's really a thing for me when I have an opportunity to fight for my fight for anyone, but fight for my wife, fight for someone, that inspiration actually solidly lands within me, and I actually fight better when I fight for someone. But the other thing is, fighting in tournaments brings a certain level of intensity and focus. So fighting in big tournaments brings a certain level of intensity and focus. Fighting at MGT or Candlemas, you know, you're always getting someone's best fight. But when you're fighting when something's actually on the line, other than, hey, good job, when there's this, I don't want to say prize, but when there's this job at the end that you want to do for someone, that you want to serve after, that you want to bring, you want to do well for other people and for yourself a bit too. I'm not going to lie about that, but you know, there's a little bit of coolness there. But I know that every person I step out on that field with, I'm never going to get a training fight, right? They're not going to bring me their C game, you know, unless they're off. We all have odd days, but I know I'm getting their best fight, and they should know they're getting my best fight. And that contest between peers, because when we get out there on the field, we're all the same. We're all, you know, we're all combatants in this tournament for this goal. There's just no fight feeling like that in the SCA, especially when I come up against, you know, a really good fighter in there. I'm still giving, you know, the worst fighter in there, I'm still giving my best fight, my most focused fight. But especially when you get deep in that list, and you're facing that guy that, you know, you've looked at the field before this, like, these are the people that I have to get by. And there's that last one that may not even be the finals, but there's that last guy that you're like, this is the guy I have to get past for me to have a really good chance at this list, and you get by them. There's few feelings like that. And you come back and your lady or your consort is ecstatic about it there, because they know you've talked to them in the car on the way to the event. You know, you looked at the list, you're like, I've got to deal with Circona, and this is the person I've got to get past in this tournament. You got to get past Gareth, for all Lord, that problem that comes with that.
Yeah.
But when you get past that person, or you're lucky and they withdrew, then there's a relief, but there's not enough relief that because you still have to finish. You still have to finish, right? You still have to have your coffee at the end. Coffee's for closers. You got to have that at the end of the tournament. So that's why it's the contest between equals, the contest between peers, and then the raising up of my consort. That's it for me.
I think all of those are great. I've heard, I think a lot of people feel that same way. And I think that's in some ways, I think we're seeing, like I said, I think a lot of people thought, oh, well, I shouldn't fight in Crown if I can't win. And it's like, well, first thing is, maybe your odds aren't nearly as high as some others, but there is no, you can't win. I have seen, people I've seen unbelts win that absolutely didn't think they were going to win in a relatively large crown. So yeah, the path to the top isn't always super clean. And I don't mean by calibration, but it's not like, you have to fight some super duke every round until you win. You could literally find yourself in a path that you're fighting a couple other unbelts, you run across a knight or somebody that didn't have a great day or whatever. And then next thing you know, you're in the finals. So, and then you put something together and you're there. But
yeah, I always refer to that as acceptable risk.
Yeah.
Like you have to weigh your chances of winning the list versus your chances of actually being able to do the job. And you have to do a risk assessment on that and find out, because I mean, if you're only going to go 2 and out, then you might as well fight ground. But if you've been pushing in the semis and the semis or the quarterfinals, you've been getting deep in a list, and all of a sudden you lost your job, you need to reevaluate whether or not you have the capacity to do that. But it's acceptable risk, and when I the last few crowns that I've fought in our kingdom, I've been fighting with the glaive, because as Ulrich was saying, there's just nothing like the competition of crown. Regardless of how good you think you're going to do, regardless of the weapon system that you're using, if you want to, I mean, me being able to go into that with, like the glaive for me is a pretty significant handicap. And but at the same time, if I'm going to try as hard as I can to win each fight, and if I do, I'm going to do the job. But my risk is definitely lower with that weapon system than it is with my primary weapon system. And, and it's an acceptable risk, and that's something I have to weigh out. And I'm perfectly comfortable with the idea of I'm legitimately trying to beat everybody I can with this weapon system that is not my primary. And, if I do the job, then, or if I win, I will do the job.
So can I pop something in there?
Yeah, it's your show, man.
So you said a minute ago, people wonder, if they should even fight in crown if you can't win. Go ahead. If that's your attitude, go ahead and fight in crown, because you know what? If you're going in with the attitude, I can't win, you're not going to.
There you go.
Right. So the one that I won, I probably finaled with Gareth. If I didn't win the tournament that I fought in, I finaled with Gareth. Never beat him in one of them, probably 6-7 times leading up to that. Duke Gareth from Meridies, by the way. I probably finaled with him 6 or 7 times going into that crown list. He dropped out the night before, and it was like a weight came off my shoulder, because I was focused on that. I got to take care of my business, and then I've got to get to Gareth, and I've got to deal with that. And when he withdrew, a weight came off my shoulder, and I fought that tournament the lightest I've fought any tournament I think I've ever fought that meant something, because the monkey was proverbial monkey was off my back.
I was gonna say, you're telling me you won crown when you finally weren't concerned about it anymore?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, exactly. Although I don't think I'd call Gareth a monkey. He's more like a gorilla.
Very, very with a vicious rising snap. Yes.
The idea of going into the tournament with a clear mind is really difficult to achieve. And a lot of us go in and out of over our career being able to do it, right? But so clearly that was an obstacle that was, for you thought unsurmountable, really. And once that was removed, now you had a clear path to winning. And so you could achieve, And so what's funny about that is like, I know so many fighters that are like the concept of winning crown is impossible until they win crown. And then after that, it's like entirely achievable, right? Once you get past that barrier, a lot of people then can shed all those things. And so for you, fortunately, it was just Gareth, right? And then now, you know, that cleared that path for you. It's a really hard thing to achieve. And it's something, like I said, that many of us go through in and out of our careers between training or focus, all these things, being able to do. But it's really, for me, I think that's the perfect state for a fighter to be in a clear mind. You go in with no expectations, no nothing, bring no plans to the table, and then you just allow the fights to happen organically. And at the end of the day, you'll find oftentimes you're standing in the final circle. And so,
And you know, it's that question they ask in the Kingdom of Heaven, you know, does making a person a knight really make him a better fighter? And the answer is yes. And the reason for that is exactly what Thorfin just said. You know, once you have had, I mean, especially at the knighting level, once you've had that external validation, you have the body of chivalry says, no, you really are this good. You know, you get to be a better fighter after that, because you no longer have to worry about whether or not you're good enough, because the body of chivalry said that you are. And again, believing that you are makes it a lot easier to do that. And I know Thorfin and I had both been prince before we had become king. And so, you know, if you're fortunate enough to live in a kingdom that has some principalities, you know, you get knighted and you get that bump, you know, for that reason. And then you manage to work through coronet list and you get that same thing. You're like, oh, I can do this. Then you win a crown. And you're like, oh, I can do this too. And then after that, you know, it's just like every list you're in after that, you know, it just, that confidence just builds, and you're like, I can do anything.
yeah, exactly. Absolutely. I don't even know how many fights you win through just being present in the fight, right? Like you show up and the other guy's already so stressed about the fact that he's fighting you that they're already losing the fight before you even got into stance. You know what I mean? And they're just allowing you to win. And I think that that's part of their fear of having a plan and all those things that work, right? And so I always complain about this, like, no, don't have a plan, but everyone has to have some kind of thing they're doing, right? So I understand that that's difficult to achieve, this kind of concept, but it really, when you get there, it's really freeing. And so that's
So I think when we get into that idea of a plan, that idea of a plan is, it's kind of a little bit like Ellen posted something this week. It's like this training for crown concept, right? And the plan is do what you always do.
Right.
I mean, you don't have to pre-plan stuff. In fact, when you do plan stuff, you have another layer of thought in your head that you have to go constantly through.
Exactly.
And
right.
you're literally laying that over your base. And
right.
Some people can manage some pieces of that, but it's disjointed. If you train all the time to do the things that you should be doing, then you don't have that layer anymore.
Exactly. It steals away from your foundation of skills, because you're convinced that a person is going to do an activity, and which plays into your plan. And then if they don't do that, suddenly you're in the weeds. And instead of you being allowed to just be present and attack when they open or whenever the opportunity arises. And so, like I said, this is like a thing, guys, as we go through, all fighters go through this, and and sometimes you're doing it, sometimes you're not, but it's a place to try and get back to. Yeah.
So we're kind of top of the hour here. Ulrich, do you want to say anything? Give you the last couple words here.
No, thanks for having me on. You guys, I watch you guys show religiously every Friday. So, you know, I rarely miss it. And if I do miss it, I pick it up on, you know, Saturday night while I'm crashing out. So thanks for being on. This has been an absolute honor. All you guys are amazing, and I appreciate you. And I appreciate what you're doing for the fighting community. It's you know, it's not, it means a lot. I don't know how to express it any more than that. And my advice to anyone else is practice more, be confident.
Yeah, I would agree. Thanks for coming on. You know, I look forward to talking to you all the time. We get a chance to talk a lot on Tuesdays, and we get to see each other from time to time. Not enough, but you know, still. Thanks for making time for us, and I know I had a really good time. So
really great.
Well, thanks to Vesper.
Yes,
always.
Thanks to Vesper. So on that note, anybody else have anything real quick before we cover what's coming up next week?
No, good.
I guess that's a no. So let's, Sean, do you want to say what's coming up next week, or do you want me to cover it?
I think we're doing an elephant in the room, right?
Yep, that's exactly it. I think we're doing stop driving people away.
That's right.
And really the episode isn't just going to be, you know, hey, everybody's mean and driving people away, but I think the piece there around this episode is, you know, not only do we have to watch what we may be doing things that are driving people away we don't even know. And I think, you know, I think we need to be more aware about how to make people comfortable, how to bring people around, more public activity stuff instead of maybe it's really easy to do private activity at houses because it's comfortable and all the stuff is there, but it's very uncomfortable for people to come. But, you know, there's lots of layers of figuring out how to make people feel more comfortable and more the group itself more approachable. And I think that's super important to us. The last thing we can do is drive people away because we've lost enough already, and it's time to rebuild.
Sure.
Vesper, it's awesome to see you. Thank you very much for fixing all our stuff and getting us going. I know it's not 7:30 in the morning, but we're here.
Well, it's always a pleasure. And of course, we'll be back next Friday night. So in the meantime, everybody have an amazing weekend. Thank you to our wonderful guests tonight. And we will see you all in the following week.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Stay safe, everyone.
All right.
Everyone.